Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's longtime business partner and vice chairman of Berkshire Hathaway, delivered a dire warning about inflation. Nuclear war, he believes, is the biggest threat, followed by rising expenses. Inflation is one of the most often used terms in economics. It has previously thrown other countries into lengthy periods of upheaval. Central bankers often like to be identified as inflation hawks. Politicians who entered an administration promising to battle inflation later lost power. During Gerald Ford's presidency in 1974, inflation was even labeled the nation's #1 enemy. But what exactly is inflation, and why is it so significant? Hello everyone, welcome to Wealthy Wisdom. In this video, we're going to talk about Charlie Munger final warning. If you're new to this channel, do like and subscribe to the channel. In essence, inflation is the rate at which prices rise over time. It may be measured in more particular ways, such as an increase in the cost of certain things, such as groceries, or services such as haircuts. It is often seen as a broad word that encompasses the overall rise in prices or greater living standards inside a country. Inflation, independent of context, refers to how much more expensive a given set of items and or services has become over a specific time period, most often a year. It only accounts for half of the definition though. Another definition of inflation is a reduction in the buying power of money. The problem is that prices are increasing as a consequence of a relatively strong demand for products and services and a lack of supply due to supply chain constraints. Simultaneously, the Federal Reserve has been increasing the money supply by printing more currency. In truth, the Fed has essentially generated $4.72 trillion since February 2020, as commodity supply has overtaken demand and money has grown more abundant. There has been significant inflation. The annual inflation rate in the United States was 8.3% in April 2022. According to inflation estimates, annual inflation is expected to be 2% on average. As a result, it is evident that we have exceeded that limit, and the Fed will now need to interfere by increasing interest rates to halt the economy and lower inflation. So far, that is the story. With that setting in mind, let's listen to Charlie Munger's final warning. During Charlie's most recent interview, a momentous incident happened. His remarks have shook the financial sector. Charlie Munger stated it this way: "The US has made some significant moves, but we don't know how bad the issues will be or whether they will be substantially worse than Japan. I think we are aware that we are approaching perilous ground." It's tough to read those 3 sentences. Charlie is referring to the phenomenon known as money printing, in which the United States has manufactured more than 40% of all US dollars ever issued. The eventual result of this process of creating money out of thin air is inflation. As I previously said, you've probably certainly heard that the current inflation rate at 8.3% is almost a 40-year high. In reality, inflation is much higher than 8.3%, but the amount can be easily changed by deciding which items should be included in a basket of common goods. Naturally, it makes sense to inflate the inflation rate to keep people from throwing bananas at institutions in power, which are governed by white men over the age of 70. We pay the inflation tax every time we fill up at a gas station or go shopping. Small taxes do not worry about us, but additional taxes ranging from 7% to 15% raise the hairs on our backs. The current banking industry was able to keep inflation and the operation of financial markets under wraps until Twitter and Reddit started translating the language of the people in suits. Recognize that when inflation occurs, your buying power will decrease. The odd Japanese allusion Charlie uses Japan as an example to demonstrate the dangers of reckless money production by governments and central banks. The abundance of luck in Japan, which had run out in the 1990s, was refilled by 60% and 70% respectively. The government and the central bank worked together to solve the problem. In addition to their own debt, they purchased back numerous additional common stocks. It was a time when interest rates skyrocketed and vast quantities of money emerged out of nowhere. There was a time of little economic advancement because the government controlled a major portion of what, by theory, Japan's economy has never fully recovered from the disaster. This is the error that everyone makes. Despite its flaws, Japan remains a lovely country. there will be no street riots, businesses aren't an issue, because unlike in the United States, firearms are legal there, the people are satisfied and do not kill one another. Despite the volume of free money distributed, Japan did not suffer significant consequences. You shouldn't believe the bulk of the vitriol claiming that financial markets are doomed as a result of this. History shows that, despite poor decisions made by countries, life carries on. Charlie believes that we have no clue what the consequences of the latest financial exploits will be for the United States. When the United States created billions of dollars out of thin air, it changed history forever. Japan showed us that this experiment may endure for a long time. The essential question right now is whether Americans will speak out against financial disparity or keep silent, like the wonderful people of Japan have done. If you like this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Let's continue to talk about Charlie Munger final warning. Don't wipe the sweat from your face just yet. We'll talk about a bucket of cold water over your head later. In the 1970s, there was 15% inflation. This resulted in a catastrophic recession that harmed many people. Charlie believes that this will be difficult to repeat since governments now have considerably more control over financial markets than they had in the 1970s, and they will most likely prevent another recession like that one. But wait, creating money is dangerous, so proceed with caution. We must choose between doing so and not doing so. Charlie went on to say that the present problems in Japan are unlikely to be the same as prior ones. Then, to my surprise, he asserts that our situation has worsened. Price should fall and supply chain issues should be resolved. Since the difficulties may still be a long way off, the Fed should avoid overreacting and raising interest rates too rapidly, like Japan did. If inflation rises above 8.3% in the coming months, the Fed may act hastily as we saw in 2020. In order to curb inflation, Paul Volcker, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, hiked interest rates to 20% in the 1970s. Many individuals were upset by the action. Charlie Munger final warning that may surprise you. Even though the 1970s economic crisis is long gone, you may prefer the impending recession to one reminiscent of the Vulcan 1970s. Charlie believes that the situation might be worse than it was in the 1970s. There is no exception for the rest of the world. When the United States sneezes, every other country gets a cold. And because the majority of countries have created excessive amounts of money and reduced their interest rates to zero, any interest rate increases will be met with a rage from angry Americans. How does this have a negative impact on you? You should keep a close eye on the 8.3% inflation rate that the world economy is experiencing, regardless of whether or not you invest. Maintaining financial solvency might be difficult. Crashing of the stock market is a very real possibility. Charlie and a few other financial dinosaurs are making it publicly known that they believe the current craziness must end. Charlie's go-to strategy in these kind of predicaments is to choose the alternative that will cause him the least amount of discomfort. He has a total of 4 equities and a few real estate assets in his investment portfolio. According to him, the majority of individuals engage in far too much diversification when all they really need are astute investments. We are now living in a difficult era in the course of history. Nobody can predict what the next step will be. Even if Japan has shown that nothing is impossible, the likelihood of problems is increased since the country's leadership enjoys having the ability to pull the trigger on financial markets. The fact that famous people are discussing how to conjure up money out of thin air is a clue that we are living in interesting times. We've reached the end of another video and thank you for watching. I hope you have learned the Charlie Munger final warning. If you like this video, do give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment down below. Thank you and goodbye.